On today's show, we interview Bill Wooditch about these super moves to becoming a super successful salesperson. Bill is a master sales trainer and a top-selling author of the book Always Forward. And his second book, Fail More, published by McGraw-Hill, was released on March 26, 2019. His book provides the insights and tools you need to take active strategic measures to turn the sting of failure into the reward of growth.
3, 2, 1, boom! You are now entering the dojo of Mojo and the Thrive Time Show.
Thrive Time Show on the microphone. What is this? Top of the iTunes charts in the category of business. Drilling down on business topics like we are a dentist. Providing you with internship like you are an apprentice. And we go so fast that you might get motion sickness. Grab a pen and pad to the lab. Let's get in this. It's time to bear some fruit like some Florida oranges. 3, 2, 1. Here come the business ninjas.
Sonic boom!
Yes, and yes. Bill, welcome on to the Thrive Time Show. How are you, sir?
Clay, honored, humbled. I'm in the clouds. Thank you for having me on your show.
Hey, you are a super successful salesman. People that look you up are going to quickly find this out about you. But tell us, how and where did you grow up?
Grew up in a small town, Clay, about 3,800 people in western Pennsylvania, tucked away in the middle of a forest. And that town became really a metaphor for life for a number of people who really lived under, literally, very, very short, small ceilings. And their aspirations and dreams were about as big as the ceilings. A few got out. And when they got out, they found that the other side, outside of those forests, was where promise and potential met. And so for us growing up in that small town, there was a lot of great things that happened in terms of values that were inculcated in us, baling hay, having horses, learning how to fish, all those things that are almost like a Mark Twain existence. So I grew up shoveling snow. About this time of year, I'd be out there with a shovel. It is almost a year-round rite of passage. And that's where I grew up, small town, Western PA, inveterate Pittsburgh Steelers fan until death do us part.
How many people lived in the town that you grew up in?
About 3,800.
3,800, okay. So now, my understanding is that before becoming a super successful salesperson, you have described yourself as being once crippled with fear. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think it's incumbent, Clay, upon each of us to look inside and really find the epicenter of our own fear. We all have our fears. They're just really at variance by nature and degree. So I looked inside and thought, what is it that is holding me back? What's my biggest fear? And I think there was an umbrella of uncertainty that really cloaked me. And I thought, I just don't have the confidence. I don't have confidence that I can be good at anything. Didn't know what I could do. So that lack of confidence was crippling. So until I was able to see it and then find a way through it, there was nowhere for me to go outside of the confines of that town.
Knowing that you had this fear, what did you do to get over the fear? Walk us through, because a lot of our listeners right now have a fear of starting a business, a fear of making sales calls, a fear of trying a new industry. Walk me through how you were able to get over that fear.
The first thing I would really suggest the listeners do is to tie these two things together. When you know about something, when you have a knowledge or an awareness of something, you have a personal obligation to do something about what you're now aware. So for me, the obligation was, I have this fear. You can do one of two things. You can play your life forward and have regret and think about being at a place and stage of your life where you can't do those things you can do now. So what do you want to do? I asked myself, do you want to go through life with regret, or do you want to face this fear? Find out if you can do it. Find out how good you are. And just, if you fail, you know what? You tried. And that was everything to me. So that's the first thing you have to do, is to find out what it is you really, really need in life and what you're willing to endure to get it.
Bill, what were you willing to endure to get it?
I can tell you this, it's going to sound kind of flippant, just about anything. Because staying where I was going to be the same thing like the movie Groundhog Day. It was going to, and that was that town was Punxsutawney was about 30 miles away from where I grew up. So, that was going to be Groundhog Day. It was never going to change. The scenery wasn't going to change. I wasn't going to change. Nothing was going to change. Eventually, I would have became extremely irrelevant and obsolete, just obsolete. So for me, I was going to do whatever it took. And the bargain of success is you better be able to meet it on its conditions. You're not going to be the one dispensing terms.
Now, I understand that you went on to become a top salesman at a Fortune 500 company in less than 2 years. How did you go from the bottom to the top, and in what industry were you in?
It was corporate insurance, workers' compensation, general liability. We were corporate insurance brokers. So Liberty Mutual was a direct writer of this product. And the great thing was, Clay, is that you had to buy it. The variables, from whom did you buy it? It was not life insurance. It was business insurance. So I had to learn something that to me was just anathema, something that was dirty, something that I didn't want to do. I had to learn how to sell. And that was the first crucible, the first test, is you've got to do something you really find maybe repulsive because you don't know anything about the actual art of selling. So the first thing I had to do is to learn how to sell.
How do you go about winning hearts and minds? If listeners out there want to do that, how does somebody go about doing that?
First step is to know that you're not going to win every one. Some hearts really aren't winnable. They're already won by someone else, or they're not able to be in love with you. Some minds are closed beyond redemption. They're not going to open. So the first thing you have to understand in sales, in enrollment, is the law of numbers. It's always going to be activity that rules your success, the law of numbers. So what I would do is to know when I couldn't win, when I was shut down, when maybe they weren't giving me the information I needed, maybe I was being stalled, maybe they had a long relationship with their current provider or broker. So I would do those things to find out what is winning, what do I need to do to win. If I was prevented from doing that, then I would learn to walk away from it. So the first thing you need to do is to learn which hearts are winnable, which minds are open.
What's your pro tip for all the listeners out there that are doing sales that are struggling to overcome fear and fear of rejection?
Rejection is an emotional response to fear. It's fear's response to keep you safe. You don't want to be rejected. So you tend to, the brain wants you to withdraw because the brain's number one priority is to preserve itself. So I learned that the more I did it, the less personal I took it. And by making it a game, I started to see lifestyle changes for me that were worth playing the game. Didn't take it personal, made a ton of calls, didn't do it with a smile. Sometimes it was a slog. Sometimes it was a grind. Sometimes when people would hang up on me, I'd call them back and slam it down on them. Juvenile as it was, it made me feel better. There's no perfect approach. There is just start. And there is do and do more. And the more you do, the better you'll get. But you're never going to be perfect, because perfect is always the enemy of good. And all we can ever be as humans is good.
When do you feel like you were starting to gain traction in your career? Like, at what point did you look up and say, wow, I'm actually doing well here?
When I started cashing big checks. Actually, when I started to move up the leaderboard. See, for me, I was obsessed to a point of probably wasn't the healthiest thing for me. But I had a very, very linear, a very, very tight focus on what it is that I really, really wanted. And I wanted to be number one. So there was this board that would show who the top 100 people in the company were. And so on that board, I would keep doing all that activity to exhaustion. You'd go home, just stale perspiration and just a cauliflower ear, because in those days it was a phone-up ear. And I would see myself through that activity starting to make those deals, starting to be enrolling hearts and minds. And I just kept doing it. And the more I did it, the more I just kept feeding. It's like a self-feeding mechanism. And the more I did it, the better I got, the more I closed. And I started to climb up that board. And when I saw myself hit that top 20, I knew that I was on my way. But I really never validated it as a success until I got there. And then it was never enough. So I always raised the bar. Just getting to a certain place and stage, if you're a real achiever, and you have that achiever's gene, you're always going to raise the bar on something else.
So what inspired you to write your new book, Always Forward?
Ego. No, actually, part of it. I wanted to leave legacy. I wanted to leave something behind because I had trained so many sales reps, so many producers, not only in my company, but through different seminars and keynote speeches and then actual breakouts. So I thought, what is it? What are the common things that I did? Looking back as a retrospective, what is it that I think they could do that would be things that would, in any industry, whether it's something that is an intangible or whether it's something that's a tangible product, what would those steps be, step by step, if you knew nothing about selling? And so it started out as a sales guide. It ended up as what some spots I've had on television and radio would call a life philosophy book. So it really married a mindset to the actual motion, the tactics, the strategies you need to get all the way to yes.
So what kind of practical super moves can readers expect to find in your book, Always Forward?
I'm going to give you the one major super move that will make a difference for you today. And this is not that stuff you see on Instagram that comes popping across and said, boy, if I got something, a dream that I want you to buy, just, pay me. This will work. When I was doing these things basically on a subconscious level, maybe like Maslow's, one of his theories, it was someone pulled me aside and said, you know why you're closing more and doing more things than other people? And I had a lot of activity. That was one. But they said your ability to take a thought and then follow that thought with a decisive action very, very quickly. There's really no time between your thought and that action. That's making the difference because, see, a lot of people are thinking and not doing.
Yeah.
Some people are doing without thinking.
Yeah.
But when you can take a thought, I should call Clay. Bam, call Clay. Because other people are still stymied in their rejection, stymied by fear of calling someone or making that call. Or you know what, Clay? The inexcusable is they're apathetic. They just don't give a damn. And so you're going to kill the apathetic, and you're going to kill the fearful because you're out there making those things happen with a really, really, really short time window. Opportunity's not going to wait, man. Get out there and take it.
You've gone on in your career and you've written multiple things, and you wrote one book called Fail More, which is a Wall Street Journal bestseller. What inspired you to write the book Fail More?
You start thinking about walking through a bookstore when their bookstores were open or through an airport when you could freely travel. And think about all the books on the business shelf. For the most part, they're success books. They have how do you open your umbrella? Why is it different colors? How do you do this? Everything's about success. But they're not telling you what the dirty little secret is, man. And the key thing, where the sausage is made, they're just showing you the sausage, right? Come and buy it. It's made through failure. See, the other side of that coin of success is called failure. So all I did was turn it inside out and said, if you want to become successful, then fail more. Man, get out there, risk intelligently. Know where your fear is coming from. So I isolated, this is where fear comes from in the brain. Here's how you get through it. And so the publisher, McGraw-Hill, was very demanding. They didn't want a rah-rah book. They wanted a book that actually would give a blueprint for how do you move through the fields of fear, how do you deal with failure, and then how do you turn those failures if you keep moving forward into success. And I wanted to write that book. It was a kick because it's really the epitome of who I am, really a contrarian. I want to look at the different sides of things, and I want to tell people what I believe is the thing or the real thing or the thing that helped me. Doesn't mean it's going to help you. Doesn't mean it's your reality. But for me, man, that stuff worked.
So how do you go about organizing the first 4 hours of each and every day? I
learned just playing football a long time ago that it's better to hit than to be hit. So I really want to be proactive. I don't want to react as much. Yep. So by getting out there and doing it. So first thing I'm going to do in the morning is just try to set my frame of mind. By taking some time and reading from a good source. Could be fiction. Most of the times it's something along a biography. Maybe it's Churchill. Maybe it's some history. But I really don't dive into too many business books, believe it or not.
Got it.
I'm really looking at different thoughts that can open up my mind in history or look at something that can help me frame what I want during the day. It takes about an hour. Next thing I'm going to do is to make sure I'm chasing that with a lot of coffee. Then I'm going to eat breakfast. Then I'm going to look out over the expanse of the opportunity I have and be thankful, have gratitude for the chance to open my eyes that day and do something that impacts the life of another. So I'm always starting out with that gratitude, servant leadership thought first before I dive into my ESPNs when there's sports on or dive onto my feeds and see who's liking my stuff. And I don't really care about that.
So what are a few daily habits that you have that you feel like that have allowed you to become successful?
I'm trying to marry every day my mental and physical. I think it's all mind body. I think that you've got to be able to cash those checks your mind writes with the physical energy and ability that will bring it all the way through from a promissory note to cash. So the first thing I'm going to do is to make sure I get some form of workout in. I'm going to make sure I'm disciplined, that I have habits that are going to be conducive to success. See, you don't want to sit back on the couch. You're not eating the right diet. You're not out there engaged in some kind of contact sport or some kind of contact in terms of a gym or even walking. You need to get yourself moving. That's where creativity spawned. So you got to be able to create that mind-body dualism where you can then think with purity because your physical ability is there for you. You can call upon your reserves when you don't want to make those calls, man. You don't want to get on that plane. You don't want to do that, but you got the stamina and the endurance to do it because you're marrying those two. So for me is habit, discipline, read, get engaged, do some physical activity, and spend some time alone. Tough to do, really tough. A French philosopher once is quoted as saying, man's biggest fear is to be alone in a room with his thoughts. Be alone. Have a notepad. Take some thoughts down. That's how you create and import the next stuff you're going to export tomorrow.
What mentor has made the biggest impact on your career thus far?
There's two forms, Clay. There's the first one is that I studied a little bit of philosophy, just enough to be dangerous in those mornings when I would start to read. And I remember that at the Oracle of Delphi, Socrates said, know thyself, I guess. And to be able to look in as a mentor and to know myself and to know what I really want, to know what I really don't want, and what was I willing to do for it was number one. And then I had a man named John Zeffel, who was a Fortune 500 CEO, who pulled me aside when I was young and taught me a number of things and, really, really spent the time having conversations. And I learned this about being a mentor, that the key to being a mentor is that, it's almost like walking down a road, like a metaphor of a road where, maybe the mentor is in front of you at first. And then you're walking side by side, and then the mentor steps into the background because then you are stepping forward as the mentor for others. So it's an interchangeable ride, and the mentor has to be able to be worthy, I think, of the mentee, and the mentee needs to be worthy of the mentor. It's a two-way street, dual obligation.
Now, with all of this Corona stuff going on right now, what's the best place for people to buy your book? Should they go to Amazon? Do you want them going to your website? Or where's the best place to pick up your new book?
Well, you can find me at BillWooditch.com, WOODITCH.com. You can also find me on Amazon before you could stumble into Barnes & Noble and do it. But you can find me on Amazon under Bill Wooditch, and both Failmore and Always Forward are both on Audible there. At least I know Failmore is because I read both of them. I'm pretty sure they're on Audible as well. But or you can connect with me at Bill Wooditch, and that's WOODITCH. So any venue that works, I would be happy to entertain.
Now, Bill, I'll give you the mic. You have the final word here. You can take it to wherever you want to take it. What is the final thing you'd like to share with our listeners today?
And all this is going to sound opposite of everything we're talking about. In this strive to thrive, to thrive, take that time to actually step aside and see things, enjoy things. Because so many of us are on this destination ride, and we're going 180 miles an hour, but we're really not cognizant of the people around us, the emotional care and feeding those people need, the spiritual overarching drive that makes us who we are. We'll really start to lose connection with that. Keep connected, stay grounded, understand that all you can ever be in life is good. And that would be part of my walk away.
Bill, I appreciate you so much for joining us here, my friend. And if people want to learn more about you, what's the best website for them to go learn more about you?
At BillWooditch.com. Bill Wooditch, WOODITCH.com. And there's a bunch of stuff through the years I've dripped on there.
Bill, I appreciate you so much for being here today. And now, without any further ado, 3, 2, 1, boom!